A warm welcome to this new video which will take you on a journey from mouth to anus. Sounds a little different, but it will be an interesting video. So, we will start the journey from the mouth and we will end to the anus. So, tell me, what do you know the steps of the journey from mouth to anus? Obviously, no. Because all the steps are a little confusing, all the steps are mixed, but I will make it simple. Now, the journey starts from mastication procedure. What is mastication? Basically chewing. Now, it will go to the it will go to the mouth. In the mouth, it will cause deglutition. What is deglutition? Swallowing. There are three phases of deglutition: the oral phase, it is the oral phase, the pharyngeal phase, and the esophageal phase. Now, after the movements in the esophagus, this is the last procedure of deglutition, the food will be gone to the stomach. Therefore, the stomach movements occur and it pumps the blood to the small intestine. And the small intestine movements, which are further four movements: the segmentation, the propulsion, the mixing, the peristaltic rush, villi movement. I said it four movements because this propulsive and mixing movement are grouped or they are coupled. So everyone considered it as only a one movement, but it ideally should be two different movements. Now, after the small intestine, from the ileocecal junction, the food will enter the large intestine and the large intestine movements will occur. The large intestine movement includes the haustral contraction and the mass movements. And the last step, the defecation or the defecation reflex, and the journey ends by food out of body. Now, going to the first process, the mastication. So what is mastication? Mastication is basically chewing. Mastication, or we will write better as chewing. Now, in this picture, what is this picture about? This picture is about the sagittal section of the human, the mid sagittal section. Now, why do I have put this picture? This picture will let you visualize what is happening. So, this part, this is the mandible. Okay, this is the maxilla, this is the tongue, this portion is the tongue. Now, food enters from here, goes here, and goes from the esophagus. Now, what happens in mastication? So, you have eaten food. Suppose we have eaten a piece of paneer. Okay, better we will write paneer. Okay, now this paneer will enter your mouth and it will get mixed with enzymes. And what it is now called? It is called the bolus. Now, this bolus which has been made, it will now be sends a signal to brain. So what does the brain plays a role in this? The brain further sends a negative feedback to jaw muscles. Now, since a negative feedback has been sent to jaw muscles, what will happen to the jaw muscles? Yes, of course, the jaw muscles relaxes. And since the jaw muscle relaxes, what will happen to the mandible or the jaw? So, the jaw drops. Okay. Now, since the jaw has been dropped, it will also cause the contraction of the jaw. So, the contraction is rebound. Contraction rebounds. Means if the jaw drops, further contraction should be rebounded to keep the jaw in position. So, the contraction rebounds. And further, mixing of food occurs, sends a signal to the brain. Then negative feedback is sent to the jaw muscle relax, then the contraction, jaw drops, then the contraction rebounds, and then it is mixed with enzymes, and this cycle continues till the bolus is made up of appropriate size, the paneer. Okay, this is all about mastication or the chewing procedure. Now we have completed about the mastication. So mastication is completed. Now we will head to deglutition. Now again this picture. Now what is the significance of this picture here? It is about deglutition, swallowing. So we can't see in our means, like we can't assume the actual swallowing procedure. But if now there's an experiment here, keep a piece of candy in your mouth and try to chew it. When the mastication procedure will be over of your mouth while chewing the candy, you will observe swallowing. So after doing this experiment, come to this video again and then visualize what is happening. Now as we have saw earlier, this is the tongue. Okay, the genioglossus muscle. This is the jaw, upper jaw, lower jaw or maxilla, mandible. This is the pharynx. This part, this one is the larynx. Then this part is the laryngopharynx. This is the nasopharynx. This is the oropharynx. This is the laryngopharynx. And further, esophagus is not seen here. Now, in the oral phase, deglutition has three phases: the oral phase, the pharyngeal phase, and the esophageal phase. So, what happens in the oral phase? Now, the bolus is of appropriate size to be swallowed. So, what happens in this procedure? In this procedure, at the first, the anterior fibers of what? Anterior fibers of tongue contracts. Now I will randomly divide somewhat like here. This is the anterior fiber. See, this one is the anterior fiber, this one is the middle fiber, and this one is the posterior fiber. So what happens? The anterior fibers of the tongue contracts at the first. This is the first procedure which occurs in deglutition. Now what happens if the anterior fibers of the tongue contracts? The bolus is pushed against hard palate. So when the bolus is pushed against the hard palate, it is further reduced to appropriate size. Then the bolus is somewhat here. Now if the anterior fiber contracts, this fibers contracts and the bolus is pushed upwards, and further the size of the bolus is reduced, it will be directed to the middle fibers. Now the middle fibers, the middle fiber of tongue also contracts, do a series of contractions, and it directs the bolus to pharynx. And what is the role of posterior fibers? The posterior fibers facilitates action of middle fibers, and thus our oral phase of deglutition is done. Anterior fiber contracts, bolus is pushed against the hard palate, it is pushed backwards, the middle fibers do a series of contraction, the posterior fiber aids in this contractions, and the bolus is pushed to the pharynx. Now the pharyngeal phase, again this picture. Now this picture holds utmost importance. Why? The pharyngeal phase is the most important phase and it is included in the protective mechanism. Mark my words, protective mechanisms. Now what are the protective mechanisms that should be done in case of deglutition? Now at the first, this is our mouth, this is our nose, the nasal cavity, and further this is the larynx, this is the nasopharynx. So this part, if the food by mistakenly goes in the nasal cavity, what will happen? It will be a dangerous situation if it persists. So the protective mechanism number 1 is what is this structure? What is the structure? This is the hard palate. So what should this be? It is a soft palate. This structure, this is the soft palate. So the soft palate at the first goes backwards and upwards. So the movement is like it go backwards and then upwards. So what it does? It closes nasal cavity. So this is one protective mechanism where the soft palate is in action. Now, what does the larynx do? This is the larynx. Okay. So the larynx comes forwards and upwards. So what happens? The upper esophageal sphincter relaxes. So the foot can go down. Now, the protective mechanism number 3 is about the palatopharyngeal fold. So we said this is the pharynx, kind of pharynx, because it is not clearly seen, but this should be the pharynx, this is the larynx. So tell me one thing, the fold which extends from the soft palate and goes to the pharynx, it is not seen clearly here, but it is somewhat like this. So the palatopharyngeal fold prevents re-entry of food in mouth. Okay, this is the protective mechanism 3. And the fourth protective mechanism is the epiglottis guards. The basic mechanism as we have learned in the primary sections. So this was about the pharyngeal phase. It is also known as the protective mechanism phase. And these are the protective mechanism. The soft palate at the first goes backwards and upwards. So it closes the nasal cavity. Then the larynx come anteriorly and upwards. So the esophageal sphincter, the upper esophageal sphincter relaxes. So the food is conducted downwards to the esophagus. Then the palatopharyngeal folds prevents the re-entry of food in the oral cavity, and the epiglottis guards. Now going to the esophageal phase. So what is esophageal phase? Esophageal phase is basically divided into two phases: primary peristalsis and secondary peristalsis. So what is primary peristalsis? Primary peristalsis is very easy. It is conduction of food from what was the earlier structure? It was the pharynx. From pharynx to stomach, or basically pharynx to lower esophageal sphincter. And the secondary peristalsis comes into action, which is opening or relaxing of lower esophageal sphincter. This was about the esophageal phase. So the most important was the pharyngeal phase. What have we seen in the oral phase? Conduction of food into the pharynx. Then in the pharyngeal phase, the protective mechanism, also it conducts the food from pharynx to esophagus. Now we have completed with the deglutition procedure. The oral phase, the pharyngeal phase and the esophageal phase. Now going to the stomach movements. So this is our stomach. Now the paneer that we have eaten will come in the stomach. Let's say this is the block of the paneer and now it should be conducted. Okay, so now what happens? At the first there are pacemaker cells in stomach. So these are the pacemaker cells of stomach. They have a specialized name. They are known as interstitial cells of Kajal. So what they do? They basically transmit signals at the speed of 1 centimeter per second, which further aids the food to go from the esophagus or the fundus region till the pyloric region. So they conduct at the speed of 1 centimeter per second. Now when they sense contractions, the paneer will go to this part. What is this part? This is the antral region. What is this? Antral region. So at the first, we will write side by side. I will write it here. At the first, what does the procedure occur? The interstitial cells of Kajal. Interstitial cells of Kajal. Kajal comes in action. Now, since our paneer has reached the location of the antrum of the stomach, now rapid movements occur. The rapid movement is from the antrum to the pylorus. Just a second. From the antrum to the pylorus, a rapid movement occur. And the speed increases of the food. The speed was 1 centimeter per second by the interstitial cells of Kajal, but it comes to be 4 centimeter per second in the antral region. And this phenomena is known as antral systole. Yes, this is known as antral systole. Then the second part, the antral systole, comes into action. Now further our paneer will reach the pyloric region. Suppose small cubes of paneer are made. For example, they are not divided equally, but I am making it for better understanding. So this small cube of paneer will come to the pylorus region. So what is this structure? What is this structure? This both structure. What is this? Yes, you guessed it right. It is the pyloric sphincter. And one interesting thing, they are in tonic contraction. So when our paneer tries to go in the duodenum region, but the pyloric sphincter guides, so it will, like if the paneer is going in the pylorus, it will throw the food back in the stomach. The pyloric sphincter, due to its tonic contraction, it will throw the food back in the stomach. This phenomena of throwing food back in the stomach due to the tonic contraction of the pyloric sphincter is known as retropulsion. Retropulsion of food. Now, this retropulsion of food that has occurred due to this pyloric sphincter is useful. Why? Because of mixing of food. And at the same time, if our paneer is of smaller particles, it will pass through this structure, the pyloric sphincter, And one interesting thing, when this retropulsion of food is occurring, the pyloric sphincter is simultaneously pumping the food downwards. And this phenomena of pumping the food downwards pumping the foot downwards simultaneously with retropulsion is known as pyloric pump. So, first of all, interstitial cells of Kajal, then the antral systole, now retropulsion, and simultaneously the pyloric pump. These are the 4 important steps in the stomach movements. So at the first, interstitial cells of Kajal at 1 centimeter per second, the antral systole comes into action in the antral region at 4 centimeter per second, the retropulsion of food due to the pyloric sphincter tonic contraction, and the pyloric pump simultaneously with retropulsion, which pumps the food into the duodenum. This was all about stomach movements. So we have completed the stomach movements. Now we will head to small intestine movement. Okay. So the small intestinal movements. So this is the small intestine. This part, just a second. This part is the small intestine. If I remove the small intestine from the body and if I extend it this way, it will be the small intestine. It is probably around 6 to 6.2 meters long. So this is the small intestine, and for our convenience to learn, I have done the small intestine in this straight tube, a pipe like tube. So going to our concept. Now segmentation. One of the important feature of small intestine is segmentation movement. So what is this segmentation movement? So basically, this is our small intestine, this part. So if food comes in the duodenum, a signal is gone to the brain, and one signal, which the efferent signal, comes to the intestine and aids a contraction here. For example, if the food is quite here, it will contract here basically. For example, we assume now if a contraction occurs here, the part will look like this. See, a contraction is occur. So our paneer, which was pretty here, due to this contraction, it will be a little closer and it will try to mix. So now segmentation. So we have created 2 segments. Now contraction occurs here and a contraction occurs here. So this contraction, which has been created earlier, it will disappear, and 2 other contraction here and here will occur. Therefore, see in the next figure, 2 contraction, this contraction and this contraction has occurred. So our paneer will be pushed a bit far and some breaking will occur. See, this one. So some breaking will occur, some, and further it will be pushed forwards. Then some contraction will occur here, then this contraction will disappear, then this paneer will be shifted towards this side, then this contraction will occur here, this paneer will be shifted from this side to this side. So this procedure will occur till it goes to the ileocecal junction. This is the segmentation movement. This is the segmentation movement of the small intestine. Now the second movement and the third movement, which I had earlier talked about, it was a coupled or a group movement, the propulsion and the mixing. This one, the propulsion or the mixing movement, is a group movement. So we will see now that. So therefore I have written it as second and third movement. Now see, any part of the GIT, you take any part of the GIT, it has 4 layers. Okay, the 4 layers are serosa, muscularis, submucosa and mucosa. So the area of interest for our movement is the muscularis layer, because contraction and relaxation causes some of the movements. So in the muscularis layer in the GIT, we consist of 2 muscles. the inner circular muscle and outer longitudinal muscle. So in this picture I have created a tube, an intestinal tube. Our paneer is residing in, and these muscles. This muscle is the circular muscle, and this muscle is the longitudinal muscle. Now, the propulsive movement. This circular muscle, when it contracts, it propulses wood. Sorry, this circular muscle when contracts propulses foods to this side, for example. And when the circular muscle is contracting, the longitudinal muscle relax, this one and this one. So when the circular muscle contracts, the longitudinal muscle relax, so the foot is pushed forwards. Now the longitudinal muscle relax, the longitudinal muscle contract, longitudinal muscle contracts and the circular muscle relax. This causes the mixing of food. So circular muscle, basically contraction causes mixing of the propulsion movement, and the longitudinal muscle contraction causes the mixing movement. Now the alternate contraction relaxation means the circular muscle contract, the longitudinal muscle relax, the longitudinal muscle contract, the circular muscle relax. So what this phenomena is called? This phenomena is known as receptive relaxation. So what is receptive relaxation? When one type of muscle is contracting, the other type is relaxing. Same goes to one type of muscle is contracting, other type is relaxing. Okay, this is receptive relaxation, and the contraction of circular muscle causes propulsion, contraction of longitudinal muscle causes mixing movement. This was all about the longitudinal and circular muscle movements. So basically this is a coupled movement. So why now have you understood why this is a coupled movement? Because this contraction is only causing that movement. So this propulsion and mixing movement are coupled movement. Now the irritation. So what is irritation? Now we have a piece of paneer in our small intestine. Okay, now this paneer will exert force on this part, this part, this part, this part randomly, and now like it is hitting the small intestine walls randomly, frequently on the same wall. So an irritation will be caused. So this irritation which has occurred, it will sense, the myenteric plexus will sense this, myenteric plexus will sense this irritation of the paneer, our footstep, the paneer. The myenteric plexus will sense this irritation, and what will happen? The mucosa will be folded, very much folded, and this folded mucosa will cause a huge propulsive movement of our paneer to the large intestine, a huge propulsive movement. So this huge propulsive movement is known as this phenomena, huge propulsive movement. What it is called? It is called the peristaltic rush. Okay, so the irritation which has occurred here will be sensed by myenteric plexus, and this myenteric plexus will initiate very much large contractions, or large contraction or large segmentation movement. A large inner mucosal fold will fold at its maximally, and a huge propulsive movement will be caused to the large intestine, and this is known as peristaltic rush. And this peristaltic rush has one clinical approach. If the peristaltic rush increases, if increases, just a second, I will write it this sign, symbol, some defect. So if this peristaltic rush increases maximally, this is the reason for diarrhea. Okay, now going further, the last movement of the small intestine. The last movement is a very simple, a very simple movement, the villi movement. So I am going a little macroscopically. This is the small intestine wall. Similarly, this is also the small intestine wall, and these are the cells, the villi cells on the small intestine wall macroscopically. Now what will this villi cells do? This villi cells, suppose our paneer, just a second, our paneer is here in many pieces, as it is in the small intestine, it is responsible for absorption. So since paneer is here, this villi, just a second, let me zoom it, this villi will push it towards the large intestine or towards the anal end. Similarly, this paneer will be pushed, this paneer will be pushed, this paneer will be pushed, and this villi helps in this contractions. Sorry, the contraction, it is not the contraction, the villi helps to move the food to the large intestine. This was all about the small intestine movement. What we saw in the small intestine movement, at the first, the segmentation movement or the segmentation contraction, in which we create segments like this. This is one segment. Further, this here it will be another segment, here another segment, here another segment, and the food will be propulsed in the large intestine direction. Then second and third, the mix or the couple movement, the propulsive movement and the mixing movement by the circular muscle and the longitudinal muscle we saw. Then the fourth movement, the peristaltic rush due to irritation of mucosa and increase in the peristaltic rush will lead in diarrhea. And also one other clinical approach for this peristaltic rush is, if there is decrease in this peristaltic rush, it will cause constipation. It is retention of feces. Okay. And the last movement, the villi movement, the very simple movement of conducting the food particles to the large intestine with the help of this villi. Okay. Now we have completed with our small intestine movements too. The segmentation contraction, the group movement, which was the propulsion, the mixing, now the peristaltic rush, the important concept of the small intestine, and the villi movement. Okay. Now we will head to the large intestine movement. Now here comes the large intestine movements, the haustral contraction and the mass movements. Going to the haustral contractions at the first. So what is haustral contraction? So now our paneer, which was in the small intestine, it is now pumped to the large intestine from the ileocecal junction to this part of this part, just a second, I will highlight it, this part of the large intestine. What is this? Yes, this is the ascending colon. Ascending colon, what does this ascending colon here? Yes, here this is the length of ascending colon, and one movement occurs only in ascending colon. Means the primarily or the major movement in the ascending colon is the haustral movement. So what is basically this haustral movement, and what is the cause of this haustral movement? So this paneer is now here. It will irritate the mucosa like this, like this. So a signal will be produced due to, what is the cause? Signal due to stretch. So the signal will go to the mesenteric plexus and the efferent fibers will contract. What it will contract? It will contract the longitudinal muscle coat. What was the longitudinal muscle coat called? Around the large intestine. This was the tinea coli. It is a bundle of longitudinal muscle coat. Now, if the contraction of this longitudinal muscle coat occur, haustras are produced. What are haustras? These parts, like this is one haustra, this is second haustra, this is third haustra, this is fourth haustra. So haustrations are produced, and further our paneer, due to this haustration, is directed here, like it will be here sometime. Then due to that same haustration, it will be directed here. So it is directed in the ascending colon. due to hostile contraction. This was all about the hostile contraction. What had we say in the hostile contraction? At the first, food comes in the ileocecal junction. Our paneer creates a stretch signal. The mesenteric plexus sends efferent fibers. Hostrations occur due to this tinea coli contracts, and this simultaneous contractions, relaxations of the tinea coli will ascend our food towards the transverse colon. And this movement of hostile contraction mainly occurs in the ascending colon itself. Other colon like the transverse colon, the descending colon is for mass peristalsis. It is not for hostile contraction. So the hostile contraction occurs only in ascending colon. This was all about the hostile contraction. Now going to the second movement, which is the mass peristalsis. The mass peristalsis. Now the name itself says it is the movement of huge mass. For means like we are now in the large intestine, so basically our paneer has been gone, sadly. So fecal particles are there. So this fecal particles, initial fecal particles, it is not the proper fecal particles, it is the initial fecal particles, some food stuff and all. For example, this one. So there are many nutrients, for example some vitamins or something like that. So the E. coli, for example, here is one E. coli or some other bacteria will absorb these vitamins. So also this vitamins, it should be absorbed by this E. coli, and also the body absorb it. Vitamins, some nutrients, some water molecules or somewhat like that. And this E. coli or some other bacteria which absorbs the nutrients from the fecal particle or the initial fecal particle will now produce some metabolites, and this metabolites, just a second, will produce some metabolites, and the metabolites comes out of the body in the form of, yes, farts or some flatulence. Flatulence is the appropriate word, but the farts is like, it is true farting is occurs due to this procedure, but farting is a bit unofficial or the like it is not the proper word for it. Flatulence is the proper word. So now mass peristalsis. What is mass peristalsis? We hadn't come yet on the mass peristalsis. So as we know, when there is food in stomach, for example, our paneer was alive in the stomach, so there are some cells, this green cells, for example this green part, the green cells. What was that cells in the G cells? There was G cells in the stomach. So what does the G cells do? When there is a food in stomach or our paneer, it will exert some pressure. As we have seen here, it is the antral systole. So due to antral systole, some pressure will be created here, or due to some movements of the stomach. So these G cells, what does the G cells do? G cells, it secretes gastrin. Okay, gastrin. Hold on here. We will go back to this intestinal portion. Now this initial fecal particles which has some amount of nutrients which have been absorbed by our body and that E. coli kind of thing. Now this irritates the mucosa. Irritation of mucosa occurs by this initial fecal particle, and this irritation will cause the brain, just a second, irritation will cause the brain to secrete some of the neurotransmitter that includes acetylcholine. And this acetylcholine further in this, as this is the muscle, the muscular coat will contract, and also the inner muscles of the large intestine will contract, and further this mass peristalsis movement will occur. This fecal particle will be just broken down and then more fecal particle will be made, and due to that mucosa kind of thing, it will be adhered together to form the feces, and simultaneous procedure will be absorption of nutrients. Now we have hold on its gastrin kind of thing. So this gastrin, what does it do? It will carry signals to the large intestine, and the signals will lead to mass peristalsis. Why? So this fecal particle, it irritates the mucosa. Yes, it irritates the mucosa. It will send signal to the brain. Brain will send efferents. Brain will send efferents. Now, this is one procedure where acetylcholine is released and mass peristalsis is occurring. But this irritation of mucosa also sends signals to the G cells of the stomach, and also the food in the stomach will send signal to the G cells. This two stimulation from the intestine, also from the stomach, will lead the secretion of gastrin. The gastrin will go to the large intestine, basically the transverse colon part, also the descending colon part, both the parts. The procedure occurs in both parts, and mass peristalsis occurs. So the procedure occurs in the transverse colon of the large intestine and the descending colon of the large intestine. Now, since this mass peristalsis movement is occurring, the fecal material will be created. The food particles, if there are any, will be crushed down. It will adhere to each other. The fecal particle adhere to each other. More adherence will take place due to the mucus present in the large intestine, and finally we get this kind, the poop or the fecal matter. And this was all about the mass peristalsis and the large intestinal movements. So we have completed the haustral contraction, the mass movements. Haustral contraction occurs in the ascending colon, mass movements occur in the transverse colon and the descending colon. Now the haustral contractions was very easy. It was due to stretch. The mass movement was due to irritation. Now the end of the procedure, the defecation reflex. The defecation process is very easy. Let's come to defecation process. Suppose this is the fecal matter. Just a second. This is the fecal matter. It has reached its maximum size and it shall go out of the body. Yes, it shall go out. But these are the two things which are preventing it. These two things. Now it is inside. It is the rectum. At the first, to identify this part, this whole part, it is the rectum. And these two things, this one and this one, these two things are preventing the fecal matter to go out of the body. What are they? This is the internal anal sphincter. And what is this thing? The second thing, this is the external anal sphincter. Anal sphincter. So now the fecal matter produced will create some amount of pressure to the rectum. Okay, to the rectum. Now since pressure is created, many sensory nerves or the mesenteric plexus nerves, many sensory nerves, like they are connected somewhere. So these nerves basically will go to the dorsal root ganglia. And what will they do? I will draw the efferents from another yellow color. They will basically send the efferent to the internal anal sphincter. And this efferent, just let it mark be 1. This efferent fiber is 1. This fiber is marked as 1. So this fiber 1 is basically the pelvic nerve. or a parasympathetic nerve. So what it will do, since it is stimulated, it will relax the internal anal sphincter. Now, due to relaxation of the internal anal sphincter, the fecal matter will come a bit lower, and it will create more pressure. At the first, I forgot to tell you which will be this vertebrae. This may be S2 to S4. Yes, it is now completed. Now, since the pelvic nerve carries parasympathetic signals and relaxes the internal anal sphincter, the fecal matter will come a bit low. Now, the fecal matter doesn't fall. Why? Fall off the body. Why? Fall out of the body. Why doesn't fall out of the body? Because of this external anal sphincter. Now, when we are like, the internal anal sphincter is sends signal. Okay, now it is relaxed. Now the fecal matter will create more pressure. We will get a urge to defecate. But if the conditions are not appropriate, for example, you are at work or you are at somewhere outside, so there is no washroom, there is no such place where you can defecate. So what does it will do? Now you will rush to the washroom. Okay, you are rushed to the washroom. Now what happens? Why does the feces come out when you rush to the washroom? It is because of the central nervous system, or basically the brain, or basically the corticospinal tract. I will draw the corticospinal tract with a different shade. Just a second. Okay, the shade matches. Yes, the shade matches. If I draw it, it will be a blunder. Just a second. Let me choose a color. Okay, this color. Okay, when you are in the washroom, many fibers from the corticospinal tract, basically they arises from the cortex. I am not following the direction of the corticospinal tract, but it will come to the dorsal root ganglia. Just a second, sorry. It will come to this part. It will go to the external anal sphincter, and now this blue colored is the corticospinal tract. But when it comes to the S2 S4, just a second, one mistake, this corticospinal tract will come synapse here, and this will go here. Rest of all it is same, the synapse, and after that synapse, this blue nerve, it is the pudendal nerve. And this efferent, what was this? This was the pelvic nerve. Now the pudendal nerve, let me mark it second. The pudendal nerve, it will relax the external anal sphincter, and once both the sphincters are relaxed, our fecal matter can come easily out of the body and it is flushed out. And this ends the story of the eaten paneer to a feces. So this was all about defecation. What we saw at the first, the fecal matter creates pressure which stimulates the myenteric plexus. This was the myenteric plexus. This myenteric plexus go to the dorsal root ganglia, synapses, a parasympathetic nerve, the pelvic nerve comes into action and relaxes the internal anal sphincter. This creates more and more pressure, and when there is means it is now urgent to go to the washroom, and when we go to the washroom, our corticospinal tract controls the motor activity and sends the signal to the spinal cord, and further this nerve, this blue nerve was the pudendal nerve, which relaxes the external anal sphincter. One thing I forgot, the internal anal sphincter, one last note. The internal anal sphincter, it is involuntary. And the external anal sphincter is voluntary. Therefore, the internal anal sphincter opens as the pressure increases, but the external anal sphincter opens only when there is a stimulation by ourselves to the corticospinal tract and therefore the pudendal nerve. It is under our will. So defecation is under our will. So we have completed the journey from mouth to anus. The last part, defecation, is also completed. Thank you for watching this.